It's 1967, the year the first Super Bowl was played. Thurgood Marshall became the first African-American Supreme Court Justice, and music was changing the world. Today, we're diving into 5 groundbreaking tracks that define this revolutionary year. Songs that challenged the establishment and pushed boundaries, just like many of you did back then. The Box Tops emerged from Memphis in 1967, born from the ashes of a previous band called the Devils. Led by 16-year-old Alex Chilton, whose raw, raspy vocals on the letter convinced many listeners he was a seasoned blues veteran rather than a teenager.
Give me a ticket for an aeroplane. Ain't got time to take a fast train.
What's rarely discussed is how producer Dan Penn manipulated Chilton's voice to sound older and grittier, even having him sing until his throat was raw to achieve that distinctive sound. The music industry's exploitation of young talent was just as prevalent then as now, with Chilton later revealing he was paid just $500 for a record that earned millions. Despite their commercial success, the Box Tops were essentially a studio creation, with session musicians often replacing band members on recordings without credit. After disbanding in 1970, Chilton formed the critically acclaimed but commercially unsuccessful Big Star, whose power pop sound influenced bands like REM and The Replacements. Chilton's career was marked by artistic brilliance and commercial frustration, until his death in 2010. The remaining original Box Tops members have occasionally reunited for tours, keeping the legacy alive, while being more forthcoming about the band's complicated history. Here's something most don't know. The Letter holds the record for the shortest #1 hit of the rock era, at just 1 minute and 58 seconds. Radio stations initially resisted playing it due to its brevity, fearing listeners would feel shortchanged. The record label actually created an extended version for radio by duplicating sections of the song. Most listeners never realized they were hearing a manipulated version on the airwaves, different from what appeared on the record. The Kinks formed in North London in 1964, fronted by brothers Ray and Dave Davies, whose notorious sibling rivalry often erupted into physical altercations both on stage and in the studio. What many fans don't realize is that when Waterloo Sunset was recorded, the Kinks were actually banned from touring America by the American Federation of Musicians, a devastating blow that prevented them from capitalizing on the British invasion at its peak.
People so busy, make me feel dizzy.
The ban, which lasted from 1965 to 1969, stemmed from on-stage fighting, late appearances, and alleged non-payment of fees. While their contemporaries like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones conquered America, the Kinks were forced to refocus on distinctly British themes, inadvertently creating some of their most distinctive work. Ray Davies originally planned to title Waterloo Sunset as Liverpool Sunset as a tribute to the Beatles, but changed the location to the London train station he knew intimately from his childhood. Despite its status today as perhaps the greatest British pop song ever written, the track only reached #2 in the UK and didn't chart at all in America. Davies has maintained an almost possessive relationship with the song, often refusing to discuss its true meaning and changing his story about its inspiration over the decades. The Kinks continued recording until 1996, with the Davies brothers' relationship deteriorating even further before a reconciliation allowed for their 2018 admission into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A fascinating detail: the Terry and Julie mentioned in the lyrics have long been rumored to reference actors Terence Stamp and Julie Christie, who were celebrity icons in 1960s London. Davies has alternately confirmed and denied this over the years, adding to the song's mystique. In a 2008 interview, he finally admitted they were avatars for the city, representing all London lovers rather than specific individuals. The song's recording also contains one notable mistake, an audible chair squeak at the 2:05 mark that was kept in the final mix because Davies felt it added to the song's intimate atmosphere. Remember watching these bands on The Ed Sullivan Show or hearing these songs on your transistor radio? We want to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below. If you're enjoying this musical journey through 1967, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of music lovers who know real music when they hear it. The Who burst onto the London music scene in 1964, distinguished by their destructive stage presence and the volatile personalities of drummer Keith Moon and guitarist Pete Townshend. I Can See for Miles, released in 1967, was actually written 2 years earlier but deliberately held back because Townshend considered it their masterpiece and didn't want it wasted on an unworthy album. The recording process was notoriously difficult, with the band requiring 18 recording sessions across multiple studios, an unprecedented extravagance at the time. The real controversy behind the song was Townshend's admission years later that it was written as a threat to his then girlfriend, later wife, Karen, warning her that he would always know if she was unfaithful. Despite Townshend's high expectations, I Can See for Miles only reached number 10 in the UK and 9 in the US, a commercial disappointment that sent him into a depression and directly influenced his decision to create more ambitious conceptual works. This led directly to Tommy, the rock opera that would cement The Who's place in music history. After Keith Moon's death in 1978 and John Entwistle's in 2002, surviving members Townshend and Roger Daltrey have continued performing as The Who with rotating supporting musicians, though their relationship remains contentious. Townshend has frequently threatened retirement, describing touring as hell and claiming he performs only for financial reasons. Few people realize that I Can See for Miles was one of the direct inspirations for Paul McCartney to write Helter Skelter. After reading a review describing The Who's song as the heaviest, loudest, most raucous rock and roll ever recorded, McCartney set out to create something even more extreme. The complex production of I Can See for Miles also included one of the earliest uses of backwards masking in rock music, a subtle background vocal hidden in the mix that went unnoticed by most listeners until the digital age allowed for closer analysis. This technique would later become associated with the Paul is dead conspiracy theories surrounding the Beatles. The Byrds formed in Los Angeles in 1964, pioneering the folk rock genre by electrifying traditional folk songs. Their version of My Back Pages, a Bob Dylan composition, represented both their strength and their primary criticism, that they relied too heavily on interpreting Dylan's material rather than creating their own. By 1967, the band was fracturing, with founding member David Crosby's increasing ego causing serious internal tension. During the recording of My Back Pages, Crosby and original Byrds drummer Michael Clarke were actually in the process of being fired from the group, with session musicians quietly filling in on many of the tracks. The result was a hit single recorded by a band barely existed anymore. After numerous lineup changes, the Byrds evolved into country rock pioneers under the leadership of Roger McGuinn, with Graham Parsons briefly joining the band before founding the Flying Burrito Brothers. Meanwhile, the fired David Crosby formed Crosby, Stills and Nash, arguably achieving greater success than his original band. McGuinn continued with various Byrds incarnations until 1973, then pursued a solo career marked by commercial disappointment but critical respect. The surviving original members, McGuinn, Crosby, and Chris Hillman, have resisted lucrative reunion offers for decades, with personal grievances outweighing financial incentives. Crosby, who passed away in January of 2023, had been especially vocal about his strained relationships with former bandmates. The recording of My Back Pages contains an interesting production anomaly. The track was originally recorded at a slower tempo, but producer Gary Usher decided it needed more energy. Rather than re-record the entire song, he simply sped up the tape during mastering, raising the pitch and creating the distinctive, slightly chipmunk-like quality in McGuinn's vocals. This unnatural sound actually became part of the Byrds' signature style, with future recordings deliberately emulating it. Additionally, the lyrics of My Back Pages, which include the refrain, "I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now," have proven eerily prophetic for the surviving band members, who have spoken about finding more joy and spontaneity in music as they've aged. Jefferson Airplane formed in San Francisco in 1965, becoming one of the first bands to emerge from the city's burgeoning psychedelic scene. White Rabbit, written by vocalist Grace Slick, was recorded in 1967 after Slick joined the band, replacing their original female vocalist. What's seldom discussed is how Slick brought the song with her from her previous band, The Great Society, essentially using Jefferson Airplane's greater commercial platform to launch what she knew was a potential hit. The song's overt drug references, thinly veiled as Alice in Wonderland imagery, somehow escaped censorship at a time when radio stations were banning songs for far milder content. Slick later revealed that the song was partially inspired by her frustration with parents who read their children stories filled with drug imagery like Alice in Wonderland, then expressed shock when those same children experimented with psychedelics as teenagers. Jefferson Airplane became one of the defining bands of counterculture, performing at both Woodstock and the infamous Altamont Free Concert in 1969, where they witnessed the violence that marked the symbolic end of the peace and love era. By the early 1970s, the band had evolved into Jefferson Starship and later simply Starship, with their sound becoming increasingly commercial, a transformation many original fans viewed as selling out. Slick's journey was particularly turbulent, including well-documented struggles with alcoholism and notorious incidents like threatening a banker with a shotgun and attempting to spike President Nixon's tea with LSD. After leaving music in the late 1980s, Slick reinvented herself as a visual artist, focusing primarily on paintings of white rabbits and other Alice in Wonderland themes, bringing her career full circle. Contrary to popular belief, White Rabbit wasn't recorded under the influence of psychedelics. Slick has insisted that the precision required in the studio made drug use impractical during recording sessions. The song's distinctive bolero rhythm was inspired by Slick's repeated listening to Ravel's Bolero while under the influence of LSD at home. The track's famous climactic build was actually a point of contention in the studio, with producer Rick Gerard initially resisting Slick's demand that the drums and bass increase in intensity throughout the song to create the drug-like crescendo. Slick stood her ground, threatening to walk out if the song wasn't recorded her way, an unusual power move for a female artist in 1967, especially one who was the newest member of an established band. These songs from 1967 were more than just hits. They were statements that defined an era of transformation and rebellion. If you enjoyed this look back at a pivotal year in music history, let me know in the comments which song brings back the strongest memories for you. Hit subscribe for more journeys through the golden age of music and turn up the volume on the past.